The Galactic Council had existed for over 12,000 years. It was a gathering place for the most powerful species in the known universe. These were not peaceful races. They were warriors, conquerors. They had built their empires on the bones of their enemies and written their histories in blood. The Volcareth were the largest of them all. They stood over 9 feet tall, with scales harder than steel and claws that could tear through the hull of a starship. Their homeworld was a planet of fire and stone where only the strongest survived. They had conquered 30 star systems before any other race had learned to travel between worlds. The Sonari were different but no less dangerous. They looked almost delicate with their thin bodies and pale skin. But their minds were weapons. A single Sonari elder could kill 1,000 soldiers with a thought. They could reach into the brain of any living creature and simply turn it off. Entire civilizations had surrendered to them, without a single shot being fired. The Krethful were perhaps the strangest of all. They were not made of flesh and blood, but of living stone and crystal. They had been born in the hearts of dying stars and could survive in conditions that would destroy any organic life. They did not feel pain. They did not feel fear. They simply endured and conquered. These 3 races formed the core of the Galactic Council along with 14 other species. Each one had proven themselves through war and blood. Each one had earned their seat at the table of power. And now they were all afraid. The Chamber of Echoes sat at the center of the galaxy, a massive space station built by the combined efforts of all council races. It was here that they gathered in times of great crisis. It was here that they made decisions that shaped the fate of trillions of lives. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the back of the chamber, feeling very small and very alone. He was human. His species had only discovered faster than light travel 60 years ago. In the eyes of the Council, they were children, infants who had barely learned to walk among the stars. Daniel was 43 years, old with gray starting to show at his temples. He had served in the United Earth Navy for 22 years and had seen more than his share of combat. But nothing had prepared him for this room. Nothing had prepared him for standing among gods. The holographic display at the center of the chamber showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots covered nearly a quarter of it, spreading like a disease across the stars. The harvesters. Daniel had read the reports. Everyone had read the reports. The harvesters were not like any other threat the galaxy had faced. They were not conquerors who wanted territory or resources. They were not warriors who sought glory or honor. They simply consumed. They arrived at a star system and stripped it of all life. Every planet, every moon, every station. Nothing survived their passing. No one knew where they had come from. Some believed they were from another galaxy entirely. Others thought they were an ancient weapon that had been sleeping for millions of years. It did not matter. What mattered was that they were here and they were hungry. Admiral Vrenkor of the Velkareth rose from his seat. He was old for his kind, with scars covering most of his body. He had fought in over 100 wars and had never known defeat. But even he looked tired now. Even he looked afraid. "The harvesters have consumed the outer reaches," he said. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. 14 star systems are gone. Their fleet numbers in the millions. Perhaps tens of millions. Our scouts cannot get close enough to give us accurate numbers. A murmur ran through the chamber. Daniel felt his stomach turn cold. Millions of ships. The entire human fleet numbered less than 3,000. Matriarch Scylla of the Sonari spoke next. She was ancient, even by the standards of her long-lived race. Her eyes were completely white and seemed to look through everything rather than at it. "I have touched their minds," she said softly. "Or tried to. There is no individual thought. No single consciousness. They are one mind spread across millions of bodies. I could not find a weakness. I could not find anything at all except hunger. Then we fight, growled War Chief Kroth of the Velkoroth younger brother to the Admiral. We gather our fleets and we crush them. With what? Asked Ambassador Telox of the Krethful. His voice sounded like wind blowing through a cave. We have run the projections. Even if every council race commits their entire military, we will be outnumbered 50-1. Our technology is superior, but not by enough. The mathematics do not lie. We face a 70% chance of total defeat. Silence fell over the chamber. Daniel watched as the mightiest beings in the galaxy struggled to accept what they were hearing. These were races that had never lost. Species that had crushed all opposition for thousands of years. And now they were being told that they would probably die. We must protect our homeworlds, said Matriarch Scylla. Each race should withdraw to defend their own territory. Perhaps some of us will survive. That is cowardice, Krass snarled. That is survival, Scylla replied calmly. There is no shame in living to fight another day. Daniel listened to them argue. He watched as fear slowly replaced anger. He saw hope dying in the eyes of creatures who had never known hopelessness. And he thought about Earth. 8 billion people lived on that small blue world. They had no idea what was coming. They went about their daily lives working and laughing and loving. They had children and made plans for the future. They did not know that the future might not exist. Daniel had a wife named Laura and a daughter named Sophie who had just turned 12. He had promised Sophie that he would be home for her birthday. He had promised that everything would be fine. He was probably going to break both promises. That night after the council session ended, Daniel returned to his quarters on the human diplomatic vessel. It was a small ship by galactic standards. Barely a speck compared to the massive warships of the Velkoroth or the elegant cruisers of the Sonari. He sat at his desk and stared at the communication terminal for a long time. What he was about to do was technically treason. He was going to bypass the chain of command and contact Earth directly. He was going to activate something that was supposed to remain secret forever, but desperate times required desperate measures. Daniel typed in a code that only 7 people in the entire human government knew. He sent a message to a location that did not officially exist. The message was short. Only 3 words. Wake them up. He did not know if it would matter. He did not know if anything could stop what was coming. But he had to try. For Laura, for Sophie, for every person on Earth who deserved a chance to survive. Daniel Hayes leaned back in his chair and looked out the viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the harvesters were moving closer. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was dying. And somewhere on Earth, the sleepers were about to wake. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains of North America, there was a place that did not exist on any map. No satellite could see it. No scanner could detect it. Even the ground above it had been designed to look completely natural to anyone who might be watching. This was Facility 7. General Catherine Cole walked through the corridors with quick, steady steps. She was 51 years old with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She had served in 3 wars before being assigned to this place. She had thought she understood what sacrifice meant. She had been wrong. The message from Commander Hayes had arrived 2 hours ago. 3 words that changed everything. Wake them up. Catherine passed through security checkpoint after security checkpoint. Each one required genetic verification, retinal scans, and neural pattern confirmation. If any of these failed, the entire corridor would be flooded with nerve gas within 3 seconds. There were no second chances here. There was no room for error. The final door opened and Catherine stepped into a chamber that stretched so far she could not see the end of it. Rows upon rows of pods filled the space. Each pod was 8 feet long and made of a metal that had been invented specifically for this purpose. Each pod held a human being who had been sleeping for a very long time. These were the remnants. Catherine walked past the first row reading the names on the pods. Peterson, Lopez, Kim, Okonkwo. Names from every nation on Earth. Men and women who had volunteered for the most dangerous experiment in human history. The Prometheus Protocol had been created 30 years ago by a team of scientists who were trying to find a way for humans to survive in space without artificial support. What they had created was something far more powerful. The protocol rewrote human biology at the genetic level. It enhanced strengths, speed, reflexes, and intelligence far beyond normal limits. It made human beings into something else entirely. It also killed most of the people who tried it. Out of every 100 volunteers, 92 died during the procedure. Their bodies rejected the changes. Their minds could not handle the transformation. They simply stopped living. The 8 who survived became the remnants. They were not quite human anymore, but they were not something else either. They existed in the space between what humanity was and what it could become. Catherine stopped at one particular pod. The readout glowed softly in the darkness. Captain Nathan Cole. Status hibernation. Time elapsed 14 years. Her brother, Nathan, had been one of the first volunteers. He had been 28 years old and already a decorated soldier. When Catherine had begged him not to do it, he had smiled and said someone had to be first. Someone had to show that it could be done. He had survived. And then he had been put to sleep along with all the others. The world was not ready for them. The galaxy was not ready for them. So they had waited in the darkness while the years passed above them. Catherine pressed her hand to the console. Authorization Cole 77. Initiate mass revival. All units. The facility hummed with power. Lights began to blink on pods throughout the chamber. Machines that had been dormant for over a decade woke up and began their work. Chemicals flowed through tubes. Hearts that had been still began to beat. Lungs that had been empty began to breathe. Nathan was the first to open his eyes. Catherine watched as her brother climbed out of his pod. He moved slowly at first, his muscles remembering how to work after so long. But within seconds, he was standing straight and tall. His eyes found hers immediately. They were different now. Flecks of gold glittered in the brown like stars in a night sky. A side effect of the enhancement that no one had expected. "How long?" Nathan asked. His voice was rough from disuse. 14 years. He nodded slowly. "And you look older. Thanks for noticing." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Why am I awake?" Catherine handed him a tablet with the briefing documents she had prepared. Nathan read them in less than 30 seconds. His enhanced mind processed information at speeds that normal humans could not match. "Harvesters," he said, "and the entire Galactic Council cannot stop them. No, they are preparing to retreat, to abandon the outer systems and try to defend their homeworlds. That will not work. If these reports are accurate, the harvesters will simply consume them one by one." "I know." Nathan handed the tablet back. Around him, other remnants were waking from their long sleep. Lieutenant Samantha Drake emerged from her pod with a grace that seemed impossible for someone who had been unconscious for over a decade. Sergeant Kevin Ortiz cracked his neck and began doing stretches as if he had simply been taking a nap. Corporal Megan Torres checked her reflection in the polished surface of her pod and frowned at her hair. 437 remnants. Each one the equal of a battalion of regular soldiers. Each one a weapon that humanity had created and then hidden away. "How much time do we have?" Nathan asked. "The Council fleet engages the harvesters in 72 hours. We estimate they will lose within a week. After that, the harvesters will begin moving toward the core systems." How long until they reach Earth? Catherine hesitated. 3 months. Maybe 4. Nathan looked at the other remnants who were gathering around them. Some were still shaking off the effects of hibernation. Others were already fully alert and listening to every word. "That is not enough time," Samantha Drake said. She was 34 years old but looked younger. Her file said she had been a pilot before volunteering for the protocol. Now she was something far more dangerous. "We cannot build a fleet large enough to matter in 3 months." "We do not need a fleet," Nathan replied. "We need transport ships. Something to get us into the combat zone." Kevin Ortiz laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "You want to fight millions of ships with 400 people?" 437. "And yes, that is exactly what I want to do." "That is insane." "Probably." Megan Torres stepped forward. She was the youngest of the remnants, having volunteered when she was only 22. She had lost her entire family in a space station accident and had nothing left to lose. "The captain is right. The council races fight in ways that the harvesters have already learned to counter. They use overwhelming force. They use psychic attacks. They use endurance and numbers. The harvesters have adapted to all of it. But they have never fought us," Nathan said. "They do not know what humans are capable of. They do not know what we are capable of." Catherine watched her brother take command as if no time had passed at all. The other remnants were listening to him, believing in him. These were people who could tear through steel with their bare hands and think faster than computers. And they were following a man who was proposing that they take on an enemy that had made the entire galaxy tremble. Maybe they were all insane. Maybe this would be humanity's last great mistake. But as Catherine looked at these soldiers, these enhanced humans who had given up everything for a chance to protect their world, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: hope. "Get them ready," Catherine said. "I will arrange transport. You leave in 48 hours. Nathan nodded. He turned to address the assembled remnants. His voice carried through the massive chamber without effort. "You all know what is coming. You all know the odds. We are about to fight an enemy that has consumed entire civilizations. An enemy that the strongest warriors in the galaxy could not defeat. We will probably die." He paused. No one spoke. No one moved. "But we are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for Earth, for everyone who has never heard of the harvesters, for everyone who is sleeping peacefully tonight not knowing that the universe is trying to kill them. We are their last line of defense. We are their only hope." Nathan looked at each face in turn. Enhanced or not, they were still human. They still felt fear. They still understood what death meant. "So wake up. Get ready. And prepare to show the galaxy what humanity can do." The remnants began to move with purpose. The sleeping giants had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. The combined fleet of the Galactic Council was the largest military force ever assembled in known history. 12,000 warships from 17 different species stretched across 3 light years of space. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand the fire of 100 suns. They represented the absolute peak of galactic military power. Commander Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge of the Valkyrie, the flagship of humanity's small contribution to the fleet. Compared to the massive Velkareth dreadnoughts or the elegant Sonari cruisers, the Valkyrie was nothing special. Just a medium-sized human warship with a crew of 800 souls. Daniel looked out at the gathered fleet through the main viewport. Despite everything, he felt a sense of awe. These were ships from races that had conquered the stars while humanity was still figuring out how to make fire. These were vessels that had fought in wars spanning millennia, and they were all about to die. Lieutenant Maya Chun approached him with a datapad. She was his second-in-command and one of the best officers he had ever served with. "The Council has finalized the battle plan, sir. We are assigned to the rear formation with the other minor race vessels." "Of course we are. Should I lodge a complaint?" Daniel shook his head. "No point. They do not believe we can contribute anything meaningful. Let them think what they want." The truth was that Daniel agreed with the Council's assessment. The Valkyrie had good weapons and a skilled crew, but they would barely make a difference in a battle of this scale. Humanity had been allowed to participate mostly as a political gesture, a way of saying that everyone was equal in the face of extinction. No one actually believed it. The wait began. Hours stretched into days as the fleet held position. Scouts reported that the Harvester swarm was approaching at a speed that should have been impossible for ships of their size. The enemy would arrive in less than 48 hours. Daniel used the time to write letters. One to his wife, Laura, telling her everything he could not say in person. One to his daughter, Sophie, explaining why her father might not be coming home. He recorded messages for his parents and his brother and his oldest friend from the academy. Then he deleted all of them. What was the point? If they failed here, nothing he wrote would matter. If they won, maybe he could tell them in person. He decided to believe in the second option, even though every piece of data told him it was a fantasy. The Harvesters arrived exactly on schedule. Daniel had seen images of them in briefings. He had studied their ship designs and their attack patterns and their methods of consumption. None of it had prepared him for the reality. They emerged from hyperspace in a wave that seemed to go on forever. Ship after ship after ship materializing from nothing until they filled the void like a swarm of insects. Their vessels were organic in nature, grown rather than built, with hulls that pulsed and writhed as if they were alive. Some were small, no larger than a fighter. Others were massive, bigger than moons, with weapon systems that glowed with sickly light. "Mother of God," whispered Maya-chan. The tactical display updated with enemy numbers. It kept updating. After 5 minutes, it stopped trying to count individual ships and simply displayed unknown. Estimate exceeds 10 million. 10 million ships. Against 12,000, Admiral Vrenkor's voice came over the fleet communication channel. Despite everything, it remained steady and strong. "All ships, this is the Admiral. Today, we fight for the survival of everything we hold dear. Today, we show these monsters that the Galactic Council does not surrender. Today, we make them bleed." A roar of approval came from the Volcarith ships. The other races added their own battle cries. Even the Krethval, who had no emotions, produced a sound like thunder rolling through mountains. "All ships engage." The battle began. The Council fleet surged forward, weapons firing in every direction. Beams of energy cut through the void. Missiles shrieked toward enemy vessels. The Volcarith dreadnoughts plowed directly into the Harvester formation, their massive cannons tearing through organic hulls. For a moment, Daniel allowed himself to hope. The Council ships were faster and more maneuverable. Their weapons were clearly superior. Harvester vessels exploded by the hundreds as the first wave of attacks hit home. Then the Harvesters adapted. It happened almost instantly. One moment, the enemy ships were falling apart under Council fire. The next moment, their hulls had changed, shifting into new configurations that reflected or absorbed the weapons that had been killing them seconds before. "They learn," Maya said in horror. "They learn from everything we do." The Volcarath boarding parties launched, thousands of warriors in combat armor breaching Harvester vessels and trying to destroy them from within. Daniel watched on the tactical display as one Volcarath assault team after another went silent. The Harvesters did not just kill them, they consumed them, absorbed their genetic material. Within hours, some Harvester units began displaying Volcarath characteristics. The Sonari unleashed their psionic attacks. Daniel felt a pressure in his mind, as their power swept across the battlefield. It was supposed to cause confusion and pain in enemy ranks. Instead, the Sonari elders began to scream. The Harvester hive mind was too vast, too alien. Those who touched it found themselves lost in an ocean of hunger that had no bottom and no shore. 3 Sonari vessels went dark as their telepathic crews burned out their own minds, trying to fight something that could not be fought. The HFY held their defensive lines with the stubbornness of their race. Their stone bodies could withstand incredible punishment. But even they had limits. When a HFY finally fell, the Harvesters swarmed over the remains, dissolving the silicon-based life forms and incorporating their durability into their own hulls. 3 days. The battle lasted 3 days. Daniel barely slept. He watched as the greatest warriors in the galaxy threw everything they had at an enemy that simply would not stop. For every Harvester destroyed, 10 more took its place. For every victory the Council achieved, the Harvesters found a new way to counter it. By the end of the 3rd day, the Council fleet had been reduced to 4,000 ships. Nearly 8,000 vessels had been destroyed. Millions of the best warriors from 17 species were dead. The Harvesters had lost perhaps 100,000 ships. They still numbered in the millions. Admiral Vrenkor appeared on the emergency channel. His face was covered in blood and one of his eyes was swollen shut. Behind him, Daniel could see fires burning on his bridge. "All ships," the Admiral said. His voice cracked with exhaustion and grief. "It is over. We have failed. All ships are ordered to retreat. Return to your homeworlds. Protect them for as long as you can." "No," someone shouted over the channel. "We must continue fighting. There is nothing left to fight with. We must preserve what remains." Daniel watched as the fleet began to break apart. Ships from every race turned and fled, their hyperspace engines carrying them away from the slaughter. The Harvesters pursued some of them, but not all. They seemed content to let the survivors go. Perhaps they knew that running would make no difference in the end. The Valkyrie turned with the others. Daniel gave the order himself, though his voice felt like it belonged to someone else. They were retreating, running away while the galaxy died behind them. "Sir," Maya said quietly, "I received a transmission from Earth Command." Eyes only. Daniel took the datapad with numb fingers. He read the message 3 times before he understood what it meant. Package delivered. En route to combat zone. 8 hours. The remnants. They were coming. Daniel looked back at the Harvester swarm that was already consuming the wreckage of the Council fleet. 437 humans against 10 million ships. It was impossible. It was insane. It was the only hope left. He said nothing to his crew. He said nothing to anyone. He simply watched the stars burn in chaos and prayed that the impossible might happen one more time. The remnant transport ships were small and unremarkable. They had been designed to look like cargo vessels, the kind that moved between colonies carrying food and supplies. Nothing about them suggested that they were carrying the most dangerous humans ever created. Captain Nathan Cole stood at the viewport of the lead transport, watching the distant light of battle fade behind them. The Council fleet had already retreated. Sensor data showed that the Harvesters were spreading out, beginning to consume everything in the system before moving on to their next target. "Tactical assessment," Nathan said. Lieutenant Samantha Drake worked the console beside him. Her enhanced mind processed the incoming data at speeds that would have given a normal human a stroke. Enemy numbers are approximately 7.3 million vessels. They have established a spherical formation with command nodes distributed every few thousand kilometers. Their largest ships appear to be processing centers where they break down captured material. Weaknesses? Their communication system relies on biological signals passed between ships. If we can disrupt the chain, we might be able to cause localized confusion. Good. What else? Sergeant Kevin Ortiz looked up from his own station. They adapt fast, but not instantly. There's a window of maybe 20 to 30 seconds where new tactic will work before they figure out how to counter it. After that, we need to change everything. So we never use the same trick twice. Exactly. Corporal Megan Torres was sharpening her combat knife, even though the edge was already capable of cutting through steel. It was a habit she had developed. Before the enhancement, something to keep her hands busy while her mind worked. The council races failed because they fought like they always fight. The Velkarith used overwhelming force. The Sonari used psychic power. The Krethful used endurance. The Harvesters had time to learn from all of it before this battle even started. But they have never encountered enhanced humans, Nathan said. No. They have no data on us. No way to predict what we will do. Nathan nodded slowly. This was their only advantage. They were something new. Something the Harvesters had never seen before. The element of surprise might only work once, but once might be enough. All units prepare for combat drop in 15 minutes. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. And whatever you do, do not be predictable. The remnants spread across. The 17 transport ships began their final preparations. They checked weapons and armor and equipment. They reviewed their assignments and memorized their targets. Some of them prayed. Others simply sat in silence, gathering their thoughts. Nathan thought about Catherine. His sister had aged so much in the 14 years he had been sleeping. She had spent all that time preparing for this moment, keeping the remnants safe, keeping their existence secret, waiting for a crisis that everyone hoped would never come. Mal was here, and she was back on Earth waiting to see if her brother would survive. Nathan planned to survive. He had made a promise to come back, and he did not break promises. The transport ships entered the combat zone. The Harvesters detected them immediately, but did not consider them a threat. Why would they? These were tiny vessels, smaller than even the smallest council fighters. The swarm had just defeated the mightiest fleet in galactic history. What could these specks possibly do? That arrogance was their second mistake. Nathan's ship dove directly into the heart of the swarm. The Harvesters did not bother to fire on something so insignificant. By the time they realized their error, it was already too late. The remnants exploded into action. Nathan was the first through the breach, cutting through the hull of a Harvester command node with plasma cutters that could slice through anything. Behind him came 20 other remnants, each one moving with a speed and precision that would have seemed impossible to any normal observer. The inside of the Harvester ship was like something from a nightmare. The walls were made of living tissue that pulsed and writhed. Fluids dripped from openings that might have been wounds or might have been mouths. The air smelled like rotting meat and burning metal combined. None of this bothered Nathan. His enhanced senses filtered out the distracting elements and focused only on what mattered. Targets, threats, the path to the command center. Harvester drones emerged from the walls to stop them. They were roughly humanoid in shape, but their bodies were assembled from pieces of 100 different species. Velkarith claws, Sonari neural tissue, Krethful armor plating. They were everything the Harvesters had consumed combined into something terrible. Nathan killed the first 3 before they finished emerging. His combat knife found weak points that should not have existed, targeting the places where different biological components were joined together. The drones fell apart as if they had been poorly assembled machines rather than living weapons. The other remnants spread through the ship. They did not fight in formation like the Velkarith. They did not rely on any single technique like the Sonari. Each one moved independently, adapting to every situation in real time, using methods that changed from second to second. The Harvesters tried to adapt, but they were too slow. By the time they developed a counter to one tactic, the remnants had already moved on to something else. It was chaos. Beautiful, deadly chaos. Samantha Drake reached the command center first. She planted charges on every critical system she could identify and then detonated them while still inside the blast radius. Her enhanced body absorbed the explosion that would have killed a normal human, and she walked out of the fire with nothing but singed hair and a satisfied smile. The command node went dark. The ships connected to it began to drift aimlessly, their orders suddenly silent. Across the battlefield, similar scenes were playing out. Kevin Ortiz single-handedly destroyed a biological weapons platform by climbing inside its main cannon and sabotaging it from within. Megan Torres held a critical junction against over 100 drones using nothing but her knife after her ammunition ran dry. She killed 73 of them before reinforcements arrived. The harvesters began to panic. It was subtle at first. A hesitation in their movements, a delay in their responses. But Nathan noticed it. His enhanced perception caught every small change in enemy behavior. They were afraid. These monsters that had consumed entire civilizations were afraid of 400 humans. Push harder, Nathan ordered over the communication network. They are breaking. Do not let up. The remnants intensified their assault. They breached more command nodes. They destroyed more processing centers. They cut communication lines and sabotaged weapon systems and killed everything that tried to stop them. Hours passed. The harvesters lost thousands of ships, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Their swarm formation began to collapse as more and more command nodes went silent. Ships that had been coordinated weapons of war became confused animals, lashing out at anything nearby, including each other. Far away, in the safety of their retreating fleet, the Galactic Council watched. Admiral Vrenkor stood on his damaged bridge staring at the tactical display in disbelief. His tactical officers were recalculating the numbers over and over again as if they must be making a mistake. That is impossible, he whispered. 400 beings. Against millions. Matriarch Scylla of the Sonari had lowered all her mental barriers. She was watching the battle through the minds of her scouts, experiencing every moment in perfect clarity. Tears streamed down her ancient face, though she did not know if they were from joy or terror or something else entirely. "What are they?" asked Ambassador Telox of the Crethful. "What could possibly fight like that?" No one had an answer. No one could explain what they were witnessing. All they could do was watch as a handful of enhanced humans did what the entire Galactic Council had failed to do. The harvesters were dying, and humanity was killing them. Stars burned in the crossfire. Explosions lit up the void with colors that had no names. The battle that everyone thought was already lost had become something else entirely. It had become a massacre. But for the first time, the monsters were the ones being massacred. Nathan. Cole stood in the wreckage of another destroyed command ship and looked out at the chaos he had helped create. His body ached from 100 wounds that were already healing. His mind was tired in ways that enhancement could not fix. But they were winning. Against all odds, they were actually winning. "All units report," he said into his communicator. The responses came back one by one. Some were missing. Some would never respond again. But enough remained. Enough to finish what they had started. "Then let us end this," Nathan said. Every last one of them. The remnants moved toward the heart of the swarm, where the largest harvester vessels waited. The final battle was about to begin. The heart of the harvester swarm was where the oldest and largest of their kind dwelt. These were not merely ships, but living mountains of flesh and metal that had been growing for thousands of years. They had consumed countless civilizations and incorporated the best of each one into themselves. They were the queens of the hive, the centers of consciousness that directed the endless hunger of their species. Nathan Cole looked at them and felt nothing but cold determination. "Final push," he said to the remnants who remained. Everything we have. Leave nothing behind. They had started with 437 enhanced humans. Now there were less than 100. The others had fallen during the long hours of battle. Their enhanced bodies finally pushed beyond even their remarkable limits. They had died fighting. They had died taking hundreds of enemies with them. They had died as heroes. Now the survivors would finish what they had started. The assault on the Queen ships was unlike anything that had come before. The harvesters threw everything they had, defending their centers of power. Millions of drones converged on the small group of humans. Waves of organic death that should have crushed them instantly. Should have. Did not. Nathan moved through the chaos like water flowing downhill. He did not think about each action. He simply acted, his enhanced instincts guiding him toward survival with every heartbeat. His knife found throats and hearts and nerve clusters. His hands crushed and tore and broke. Every movement was efficient. Every motion served a purpose. Around him, the other remnants fought with equal ferocity. Samantha Drake had lost her primary weapon hours ago and was now using a piece of harvester bone as a club. She swung it with enough force to shatter anything it touched. Kevin Ortiz had taken so many wounds that he looked more like a walking corpse than a soldier, but he refused to fall. Megan Torres fought silently, her face blank, her movements mechanical, each strike killing something that needed to die. They reached the first Queen ship. Inside, the environment was even more alien than the smaller vessels. The walls breathed. The floor was soft and warm like living skin. Strange lights pulsed in patterns that seemed almost like language. And at the center of it all was something that might have been a brain. It was enormous. The size of a building. A mass of neural tissue wrapped in protective bone and surrounded by creatures that existed only to serve it. This was what controlled the swarm. This was the mind behind the hunger. Nathan planted the last of his explosives directly on its surface. The brain thing seemed to realize what was happening. It let out a sound that was not quite a scream, but was close enough to make Nathan's enhanced ears ring. "Run," he said. The remnants ran. Behind them, the explosives detonated. The first Queen died in fire and confusion. The ships connected to her went dark, their crews suddenly without direction or purpose. A third of the remaining swarm simply stopped functioning. The second Queen fell an hour later when Samantha Drake sacrificed herself to breach its central chamber. She walked into the neural cluster with enough explosives strapped to her body to level a city. The last thing her comrades heard over the communicator was her laughing. The third Queen tried to flee. Kevin Ortiz caught up to it alone after his transport ship was destroyed. He spent his final moments tearing through its hull with his bare hands, ripping out systems and conduits and anything else he could reach. The Queen died screaming and Kevin died with it, his body finally giving out from wounds that no amount of enhancement could heal. Megan Torres and a handful of others destroyed the fourth Queen with a coordinated assault that cost them everything. When the dust settled, only Megan remained standing, and even she could barely walk. The fifth and final Queen was the oldest of them all. It had lived for 10,000 years. It had consumed more civilizations than any of its sisters. It was also the most afraid. Nathan found it trying to hide in the wreckage of its own fleet. The massive creature had folded in on itself, its defensive systems active, its remaining drones forming a wall of bodies around it. None of it mattered. Nathan walked through the defenses like they were not there. His body was failing. His enhancement was burning out from overuse. Every step sent pain shooting through nerves that had been pushed far beyond their design limits. He did not stop. He could not stop. Not when he was this close. The Queen saw him coming. It tried to communicate. It offered things: power, knowledge, immortality. Everything it had consumed could be his if he would just stop. Nathan kept walking. He reached the central mass and placed his hand on its surface. The flesh was warm and pulsed with ancient life. It was terrified. He could feel its fear through his palm. "This is for Earth," he said. "For everyone you would have consumed." He activated the last device in his possession. It was not an explosive. It was something far worse. A biological weapon designed specifically for harvester physiology. Catherine had given it to him before he left with instructions to use it only as a last resort. This seemed like a last resort. The weapon spread through the Queen in seconds. It was not painful by any measure Nathan could understand. The creature simply stopped. All of its functions ceased at once. The neural activity went silent. The heart stopped beating. The lungs stopped breathing. It was over. The remaining harvester ships began to drift aimlessly. Without their queens, they had no direction. Without their hive mind, they had no purpose. They would eventually die on their own, starving in the void without the intelligence to find food. 72 hours after the remnants had engaged the enemy, the last harvester threat was eliminated. 63 remnants survived. Nathan was one of them. He sat in the ruins of the final queen ship waiting for extraction. His body hurt in ways he could not describe. His mind felt like it had been scraped raw. He was alive, but he was not sure he would ever feel whole again. The Council fleet returned slowly, their sensors confirming what they could not believe. Ship after ship emerged from hyperspace, their crews staring at the destruction that surrounded them. As they passed the surviving remnants, something unprecedented happened. The Volcarith vessels powered down their weapons and dipped their hulls in the ancient salute of respect. It was a gesture they had never offered to another species. Not once in 12,000 years of history. The Sonari broadcast a telepathic wave that washed over everyone in the system. It carried no words, only emotion, admiration, gratitude, awe. The Krethval transmitted a formal recognition of martial superiority. It was a document they had never issued before, because they had never encountered anyone they considered equal in combat. Until now, every race in the Council added their own acknowledgement. Every species that had fled in defeat now returned to witness the victory that humans had achieved. In the Chamber of Echoes, the Council leaders gathered to receive the survivors. Commander Daniel Hayes stood at the front of the human delegation, no longer positioned at the back like a minor representative. The remnants entered the chamber slowly. Many of them were still injured. Some had to be carried, but they walked with their heads held high and their eyes clear. They had done what the entire galaxy could not. Admiral Vrenkor approached Nathan Cole. The massive Valkarith warrior looked at the human who had destroyed an enemy that had made him flee in terror. He said nothing for a long moment. Then he knelt. The greatest warrior of the greatest warrior race in the galaxy knelt before a human being. "What are they?" he asked Daniel Hayes. His voice was barely a whisper. "These remnants of yours?" Daniel considered the question. He thought about the volunteers who had known they would probably die during the enhancement process. He thought about the 92% who did not survive. He thought about the 14 years of frozen sleep, and the desperate battle and the sacrifices that had been made. "They are human," he said simply. "The strongest warriors." And the galaxy remained silent as they absorbed this answer. Outside the station, the stars still burned from the chaos of battle. Debris from millions of destroyed ships floated through the void. The scars of what had happened here would remain for centuries. But the war was over. The harvesters were gone, and humanity had earned its place among the stars in a way that could never be. Questioned again, Nathan Cole stood among the council leaders and thought about Catherine waiting for him on Earth. He thought about the 62 other remnants who had survived, and the 374 who had not. He thought about his parents and his old friends and everyone who had no idea what had happened out here, in the darkness between stars. He was going home. Against all odds, he was actually going home. The galaxy would remember this day forever. The day when the monsters came and the children of Earth stood against them. The day when 400 humans did what millions could not. The day when humanity proved that they belonged among the stars, not as children, not as observers, but as the strongest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. And in the silence that followed the council's acknowledgement, Nathan Cole smiled. They had won.